Dear ladies and gentlemen, let me allow to open the conference, our roundtable organized within the framework Alliances for EU. It is when the first idea of the project has appeared. This direct and first impulse was crisis situation in the Balkans, stalemate in the pre-accession negotiations between the European Union and Macedonia. Because of unexpected Bulgarian veto to the continuation of the Macedonian accession process. However, this situation was considered as a dangerous signal for the future of European integration, for the future enlargement of European Union in the context of upcoming EU accession of the following Western Balkan countries, not only Macedonia, but also Serbia, Albania, Montenegro, etc. They are on the table, and of course it was dangerous signal. Also the next wave of EU enlargement in the post-Soviet area is prepared, especially in the case of Ukraine, Moldova, and also maybe in Georgia for the future. So we can see how much the nationalism, how much the solution of some internal domestic political conflicts has an impact on not only on the political and security situation in particular regions, but also, in fact, it has direct or indirect impact on the continuation of EU integration process. So the aim of the project was initially to seek and engage in analysis and advocacy kind of initiative for depolarization, the intercultural relations between North Macedonia and Bulgaria. However, I think our conference will be of we will make some lessons also for another cases of EU enlargement. What's happened after our project has appeared? We can see the further deterioration of situation in the Western Balkans region, especially in the case of the relations between Serbia and Kosovo, but also in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and also very dangerous trends could be observed in Serbia because of the evolution of local domestic regime. So what will be the topic of our conference? Also the exchange of experiences of Visegrad Group countries with the EU enlargement, and how Visegrad Group states managed to depolarize not only intercultural but also political relations with the neighboring countries. It's very. I wish to stress that the message of our conference should be that we are opposing some trends to essentialization of the Western Balkan area, because these dangerous stereotypes are spread in European Union that simply it is a Balkans and we cannot do with them anything. It is a very dangerous signal, and we can point out that of course, these problems in this region are painful, are the results of some wrong decisions adopted in the past, but also in the 1990s and during the southeastern EU enlargement process. But also we faced in the past very similar problems, and that there could be find some parallels also in other countries of post-communist Europe or in EU member in among the older EU member states. So therefore, let me say once again, welcome to our conference. The participants will be colleagues from think tanks and academic institutions from Central European countries, from Bulgaria, and of course from North Macedonia. And I would like to express also our thanks to our organizers from Macedonia to conduct this meeting in Bratislava and to launch this project organized within the framework of Visegrad Strategic Grants Scheme. Our project is financed by Alliances for EU, is financed by International Visegrad Fund, but also by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea. So once again, and we can start, and I wish to give the floor to Riste to make some technical remarks.
Thank you, Juraj, for co-hosting this event. Give us the opportunity to speak about this important subject, not only for North Macedonia, but the enlargement in general. Concerning my remarks, we will go with our panelists. So we will start with Spasimir, then we have Mikhail, then we have Gabor, then we have Valentin, and at the end, as a co-host, it will be me. I think that we're gonna, after that, we have an open discussion, not only with the participants who are here in the room, but also you're welcome in the Zoom room. Spasimir.
Thank you very much, Riste. Thank you very much for stuff. Yes, just
before Valentin is Gabor, then Valentin.
Okay. Once more, thank you very much, Riste. Thanks also to Katja. Thank you to all our partners for joining this project. It is actually our second work together, and it is a very, I would say, positive sign that we started our cooperation during the COVID times, and now in the post-COVID, we still continue to work together. This project is of immense importance for the whole effort that is being made in order to bring the countries from the Western Balkans, and in particular North Macedonia, to the European Union, because it tries to critically reflect on the processes that are taking place and that have an impact on the perspective of the membership for North Macedonia. We are living in a dynamic world. Things are changing. My contribution was supposed to be on the role of geopolitics when it comes to the question of enlargement. But when I started to delve into this topic, I realized that actually the first challenge that I face is to what extent geopolitics is indeed a driver for enlargement. To what extent the geopolitical challenges that Europe is facing today are important enough in order to change the pace of the enlargement policy which we observe over the last, I would say, 2 decades. And I'm not going to go into this criticism of the enlargement policy over the last 2 decades because I think it is overwhelming, so there is no sense to repeat it. But we all know that the enlargement policy of the European Union has turned into a kind of instead of a policy towards enlargement, into a policy of management of the neighborhood, which creates mechanisms, creates tools, and in a sense guarantees a privileged position for the European Union in the interactions with these candidate countries. What is even worse, the candidate countries also learned that they practically can only mimic any effort to join instead of a genuine effort to come closer to the European Union and proving that they genuinely want to be members. Instead, what we have is this kind of political rituals that replicate membership perspective, but practically keep the 2 sides on a safe distance. So the big hope that appeared with in the context of the geopolitical challenges, and in particular the Russian full-scale invasion, is that all of a sudden the existence of an imminent external threat can serve as a driver, as an additional driver for speeding up the process and accomplishing the enlargement process for the countries from the Western Balkans. Especially that the European Union has experience in that respect. And if there is anything that from the most recent times, because we can find more examples, but for the sake of time, I don't want to go into these details. But it is enough to give example of the membership of Bulgaria and Romania, which actually joined, and now it is quite well described. The Bulgarian scholar Georgi Dimitrov has written a very decent 3 volumes research emphasizing that it was actually the war in Kosovo that served as an eye-opener for the European Union when it comes to the perspective for membership of Bulgaria and Romania. In a sense, it was a game changer. So we do have an experience with the geopolitics as a driver, but now the big question is whether today geopolitics is a driver. And unfortunately, I am much less enthusiastic than what is the dominant narrative that appears in the context of geopolitics. Actually, there is no single European document since February 22 that doesn't emphasize the role of geopolitics. But the actions that were being taken in the context of the enlargement policy provides much more dubious or questionable account of this geopolitical driver. Indeed, on one hand, we see an increased effort for cooperation between the European Union and the national elites. But the question mark is to what extent it is a rhetoric and to what extent it is a practical change. The second thing that quite often when we look at the enlargement policy and we put it in the center of our reflection is that we somehow miss the wider picture. And the wider picture is that we face problems not only regionally in terms of the relations among the countries in the Western Balkans and their neighbors, in particular, the difficult relationship between Bulgaria and North Macedonia recently, but we also have, as you mentioned, the relations between Serbia and Kosovo, the perspective for Bosnia. But also we have another very significant factor that is quite often left outside the big picture, and it is the internal situation in the European Union. The problems related to the fact that the European Union today is in a dead end. It is not on a crossroad, it is on a dead end, because on one hand, there is an enormous hope and push for further integration, which is countered by the silent unwillingness of a number of countries to agree to any new reform of the European Union, which might lead to weakening of their positions, in particular with the rejection of the concept with the unanimity rule in the European Union. So where in this equation is the enlargement policy? Well, we indeed see profound formal changes in the context of the enlargement policy. The waiting room was enlarged. Apart from the countries from the Western Balkans, Ukraine and Moldova joined it. What is even more, last week, the European Commission signaled that it is ready to start negotiations with Ukraine. From Western Balkans perspective, we can think whether this is an enthusiastic or terrifying experience. And I would tease that maybe it is enough to have a war at home so that you can go on the fast track to European Union. But leaving jokes aside, the fact is, and here comes my concern, that in practical terms, the main priority today within the European Union is the preparation of the background for a new reform, new treaty of the European Union. Because we have the 2004-2007 experience, where in the context of this biggest enlargement in the European history, you had two treaties from Amsterdam through Nice to the proposal for the European Constitution, which eventually turned to be the Lisbon Treaty. I have the impression that there is also a temptation to create this critical mass of a huge enlargement by adding more countries to the waiting room, which would eventually provide an argument for the need for internal European reform that will allow the further federalization of the European Union. But the enlargement in itself is not the goal, it is an instrument in the internal European politics today. And this is what I see as an enormous concern, especially because even if you look at the political declarations that come from, from the European Union politicians, they always march together with arguments for internal reform. So technically, the biggest concern, and I think that's my contribution to our project in a sense, is the worry that the enlargement policy can become a hostage of the internal European Union problems. And in that sense, instead of a goal, it will be a victim in which we will continue to live in this kind of an unfinished process that we observe. For the sake of time, I think it is now good for me to stop and to look forward to any questions in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you, Sposimir. Next, we have Michael. If I may, you know, I'm not so tall, so. So good morning. First of all, I would like to express, you know, several things that are on my mind, reflecting what Sposimir said, the whole context of the project, because we initiated, we had the first conversation regarding this initiative almost 2 years ago, before the first project was initiated, and I'm very happy that
not that we managed to organize and to write and to contribute, but what I'm most happy for is that we managed to gather a knowledge or experience that is a bit different than what you can see on Twitter, and this para Twitter diplomacy that is circulating in past years around. And I'm saying this for several reasons. I fully agree. I will not repeat what I wanted to say because it has been mentioned by Spasimir. But I would like to add two points. The first point is the experience when we initiated the projects 2 years ago. There was, and one more point, and thanks to tremendous support and help of Visegrad Fund, because I see there several levels of what we can attach, where we stand, and what actually is the intellectual capacity of Central Europe towards the region, that I think is one of the biggest undiscovered things that we should intellectually work on and to put some momentum there. And I'm saying this from following reasons. The enlargement from 2004-2007 cannot be replicated, and it will not be the same. The momentum that has been created in Central Europe cannot serve as an example for Western Balkans. What we see in past year, since the Ukraine has been granted the membership, the candidacy status, we see that there is one big nothing from the EU and EU member states towards the Western Balkans. No initiative, no plan, no financial instruments, no technical support in a way that, and this leads me to the Central European perspective. The initiative that has been created around at the beginning of the millennium was that V4 and Central European countries were motivated to work together, and the EU provided assistance has been an instrument to create the Central European sense of collaboration that has been further shifted towards Brussels. Nothing of that is in the place in the Western Balkans. Speaking about bilateral relations between Macedonia and Bulgaria, we see that there is a lot of talks, a lot of initiative. You should do this, you should do that, create a commission for this, create a commission for that. But in the reality, we have there is kind of successful collaboration on regional level between Strumica and Petric on the southeast of in the very small part of the border and the relation between Macedonia and Bulgaria. We have very limited, actually not facilitated collaboration between those two countries on both regional, municipal, very limited collaboration on the economic level, and very huge distrust growing in terms of general social perspective from each side. We have the situation in which the relations between those two countries are a tool for total different political aims and goals, which in the context of European integration is come on, what is that? It's it goes totally against the spirit of what the bilateral relations and the neighboring relations should be about. And instead of that, we are receiving very mixed messages coming every, let's say, 2-3 years. Then it was with Zaev government. Now it's again the signal. If you fulfill something, if there is a progress, there will be some kind of economic deal that will be channeled through usual suspects of the political game on both sides of the border, which creates a lot of questions. The EU is pushing for the solution, but actually, I don't want to repeat what Spasimir said, but I would go a bit from a bit different direction. I think, and I'm using this space, with colleagues, friends, the network that's is able to create some kind of initiative, both intellectually and on the practical level. let's see the problem of bilateral relations in the context of the EU enlargement. As you know, let's have a brief look in 2 decades back, and I will do follow up what Spasimir said. We have it's very, you know, it's a business. You have some shall I admit the German embassy or yeah, you know, now yeah, everything is fine, you know, the learning process goes well, you know. You know, let's have a brief look on the past 2 decades. So we know that these narratives do not work. We know that all these structures that has been that the finances that has been provided to the region, to the think tank community, to people, to public intellectuals that, you know, are about to shape the narrative, they don't work. They maybe serve, you know, you are meeting, or it's at least 5 years since the migrant crisis, let's be specific. We don't see any new momentum, intellectual, political, social momentum to contribute to the discipline, to the narratives with anything substantially new. We see, yeah, EU should do this, EU should do that. There should be initiative, there should be, you know, the plan. But there is no responsibility and there is no follow-up. And now the cake is the same, but we have Ukraine and Moldova participating on the same cake of finances, interest, focus, and now suddenly we see that this discipline is getting nervous. Why there is less money? Why the Western Balkans is, you know, not becoming less relevant for the Brussels? Why there is not enough focus towards the Western Balkans? And I see there, you know, two conclusions. I see there are 2 conclusions that, you know, should be of concern and should be also the discussion here. So we should admit, and I fully agree with Spasimir, that certain things that has been created by Thessaloniki summit as, you know, post-Kosovo experience, they don't work, and we should admit that this doesn't work. But at the same time, it is extremely dangerous and we should be extremely careful articulating these arguments, because suddenly we will start to point to people, not just the politicians, but also those who participate in creating these narratives, and saying there should be a responsibility. If you are not able to contribute with anything substantial new, don't pretend that you can create certain narratives, certain ideas that can push things. And at the same time, having in mind that we should also have some kind of responsibility for the process. And now getting back to the Central European perspective, let's think, or let's have an open and honest discussion where this, you know, what should be the next step. You know, what does it mean for Western Balkans, and also in the context of relations of Macedonia and Bulgaria? What does it mean, the new political momentum that came to the point that we see that there is no enlargement in foreseeable future, 2030, 2035, 2040. It's, you know, it's a miracle. It will not happen. It will not happen because there is no political momentum. The momentum has been lost by war in Ukraine. That we see that even the war is not enough to be this enlargement policy to be reconsidered and to put some substantial focus. And at the same time, and, you know, we're also blaming the European Union for this and that, but the European Union, and we see it on the first-hand experience from Skopje. They are whole Brussels and the delegation is scared to death to take initiative, to do to 4 and the instruction that comes from Brussels. They will not anything. It's no initiative will come from that circle. So if there is anything to be discussed, I would be more than happy to have a frank discussion. What are the next steps? Because admitting the reality is, at least at this point, is better than to expect that something will happen. It will not happen, and it definitely will not come from EU institutions. If it comes, then it will come from EU member states, and this is a totally different story for whole Europe, for the whole future of the European Union. Maybe also for Central Europe to the membership, reconsideration of membership, reshaping the understanding of European Union between oscillating between the political narrative and the economic narrative. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just I don't know what will happen, but at least we should be ready to think what comes next. And I think also this project sparked some ideas to think a bit differently, not to go, but step by step. And personally, I was very struggling when writing the paper to not to repeat what even I said in past decade, and what I have written in past decade. But what, at least to have a starting point to think further what we should anticipate that will come. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael, for your insight in the topic. I will introduce now Gabor Egri. Second. Okay. Cool. Gabor, if you're ready.
Yes, I'm here. So thank you very much. And I'm really grateful and also a bit sad that only online could contribute to this event. My task in the project was somehow think about the issues of historical reconciliation through the experiences of the Visegrad countries, mostly from the lens of what happened with Hungary and between Hungary and its neighbors, regarding all those efforts of historical reconciliation that were first relatively popular in the 90s and then gradually died down by the end of the 2000s, early 2010s. And today I rather would take only the most important conclusion and move a bit forward and think a bit about what could be the role of the idea of historical reconciliation as a kind of soft power element, that how it was after the change of regime in today's context. So the most important conclusion from this Hungarian case was that, unlike the German French reconciliation that was taken as a model and that was also very much embedded structurally into the bilateral relations, the Hungarian case was more either politics driven or an attempt coming from academia, and it was always somehow happening on the borders of politics. It was never really a core element of the bilateral relations, even though there were enthusiasts even among politicians, and politics could easily shut down these efforts in certain cases, like it was the Slovak-Hungarian case. In other cases, politics could even go to symbolic gestures without any kind of historical reconciliation. That was the short-lived period of Hungarian-Romanian common government meetings, sessions, and where there is a real sign of kind of historical reconciliation or something that is resembling the historical reconciliation, like the Serbian-Hungarian case, where there is a mutual recognition of victims and violence against the other. It it is again not really seeping into society. It is a mutual gesture of two ever more autocratic governments to each other, and not. Nevertheless, it is not necessarily a real basis for social closeness, proximity, because even without historical reconciliation, social surveys show that these societies got closer to Hungary gradually in the last 30 years, mostly because history and politics, and it's not really conflictual. When it comes more conflictual, then the social attitudes are also hardening to a certain extent. But I wouldn't advocate as a solution not to think about historical reconciliation, rather to understand that speaking of historical obstacles on the road to some kind of political reconciliation could easily be just pretext and not a real reason. But in the Western Balkans, there are some cases where it's obviously not just a pretext, like all the issues surrounding Bosnia and Herzegovina. And coming to this broader issue of the historical reconciliation as a potential soft power tool, or the history as a potential soft power tool of the EU, also within the context of the enlargement, I think it's very important to see how history came back into international relations and geopolitics, and the most manifest is here Russia's aggression against Ukraine, that is justified by historical arguments, and it very much seems that Russia's leader takes it seriously, so it's not just a fake pretext for him. And also we can see social attitudes hardening around it. So what's really important that in the 90s, the model of historical reconciliation was also somehow part of the soft power, and it was attractive to the extent the candidate countries that they were ready to go a long way to establish new official narratives regarding issues that were considered relatively sensitive before. This is the Holocaust. The most important is here the Holocaust. And even though it is controversial and we can see backsliding in cases like Poland, it's still somehow part of a kind of consensus. What they could, so to say, sell to the West was their own anti-communist understanding of history. So, and the real issue is that this way, what was conceived in the 90s and the 2000s is a potential European history that would serve as an underpinning of an emerging European identity that goes beyond what we know as European identity, that is really based on the practical advantages of the EU, and much less on more symbolic factors that is familiar to anyone, for anyone from national identities, did not really crystallize. It rather became this kind of interesting compromise of the Holocaust memory, being Europeanized in the new member states and candidate states, and this anti-communist understanding of the history that posits communism and totalitarianism as not being inherent to these societies, but coming from outside, sold to the West, and this is a kind of interesting balancing act. So this European history doesn't exist, and the last 10 years so a kind of very important challenge to this kind of consensus. It's more a bottom-up challenge, partly coming from academia, but it's also very much social. Just to name, which also, in a sense, destabilized this kind of idea of European history as well, even this kind of idea of European history. And this is mostly, or the most palpable example of it is the decolonization movement. So this is the idea that was fostered throughout the German Aufarbeitung, Vergangenheitsbewältigung, that societies should face their past, learn from it, and also draw very serious moral conclusions is coming again. This is a new wave. It's a very visibly also about the recognition of marginalized or earlier marginalized groups within history, and through this recognition also people think that a kind of social recognition would come, a new, better status position within society. And why it is important? Because it is exactly the development that offers a leverage for those memory actors at the state level as well, and not just outside the EU, but also in certain EU states, like we saw it in Poland with the laws about the Holocaust memory. We can see it in Hungary in a very intense way, even going to institution building. And Russia is also, who use it, this development, as a part of their portrayal of the EU or the West as a decaying, decadent world where the normality is undermined by these, by all kinds of extremist demands and developments. And this is what we see in Russia's argument as well, that there was somehow a normality when Russia was its own, when Russia had all the territories that are Russian. It is highly nationalist or linked with the idea of some kind of authentic national existence, and also a kind of clean history where mostly the victorious moments are important, and people should not care about the negative sides of their history. And it's a challenge, I think, because it, in a sense, redraw the map. So it's not just the EU who is, the EU is less and less a kind of memory actor, unlike it was in the 90s and the 2000s. The dynamics to the field of politics of memory is coming from outside, and it's not not from the official one. And it's also important because it also shows that probably pragmatism is not necessarily a long-term solution that could help in bilateral relations, but it also highlights more fundamental social issues that are expressed by this kind of concentration of history and memory. And it's also combined with this general resentment that is relatively strong in even among the new member states and within their academia, because somehow these developments also are perceived as a new expression of the hierarchical, the typical hierarchy of the Western academia being the leader and the Eastern academia being just a kind of provider of facts and the second tier academia. And it's also a problem, and this is where I think a new politics of memory could start, that could probably help also alleviating the problems, or part of the problems that are not linked with the recent past, like the problems with history and memory in Bosnia-Herzegovina or in Kosovo. And this is that the failure of creating a European history that would include and integrate the history of the new member states in a way that is not just showing them repeating the development in the West a few decades later, but being real contributors to something that is Europe, is one of the reasons that this divide still exists, that the new results in academia are not really possible to transmit to society, and therefore this kind of resentment-fueled politics of memory could be so strong and mobilize a significant part of these societies. This is also a practical challenge, but this is not my field. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Gabor. Thank you, Gabor, for your feedback. We are continuing now with Valentin Vulkanov from the Bulgarian perspective of the
We prepared a presentation so that I can give some insight on working on for some years now. Propaganda, Russian propaganda.
From people inside the Zoom room, do you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you again. Hi, everybody online. So my name is Valentin Vulkanov. I'm from New Bulgarian University and a part of a team that constitutes research on Russian propaganda in the last during the last decade, let's say. I have not been a part of the team for a decade, just two last years, but things have not changed too much. So I want to present to you some basic insight on Russian propaganda in Bulgaria in the first part of my presentation. In the second part, I will give you some insight on what happens in the discourse between Bulgaria and North Macedonia in regard to Russian propaganda as Russia sees it, so to speak. Okay, so I won't waste any more time. The first thing that I want to start with is the basic logic of Russian propaganda that we have seen in Bulgaria. It has a global conspiracy logic, and it's separated in 4 points that we have put out. The first point is that we have a global puppet master, a hegemon. In particular, that is the United States of America and NATO. They have developed into what we call the collective West, taking inside the European Union, which was a recent development in 2021. So through its puppets, which is the second part of our conspiracy logic, through its puppets, which are the Brussels bureaucrats and the liberal elites in various countries. For example, in Bulgaria, we have liberal elites, a couple of parties, a community that is liberal, we have NGOs and whatnot. They are killing through their puppets the sovereignty of European peoples, the different countries. Therefore, the third point in our logic is Europe is dying, is destroying itself from the inside. And since Russia alone is justifyingly resisting this process of destruction, it is reviving, it's rising. So this is the 4 basic points that we have developed in the propaganda machine, the logic of the propaganda machine. And we have this new Nazi imperialistic mix of narratives that we have seen developed. We're talking about the concepts of Slavdom, Orthodox Christianity put into a different perspective, not on its own. We're talking about Eurasian civilization and many other things that have come to a point that we say we're talking about the Russian world, Ruski mir, as they say it. So put into this perspective of the concept of Russian world, we have this imperialistic mix of narratives that we have encountered and are researching. So we have a couple of semantic clusters that we have developed at these points of logic that I just described to you. The first is the US NATO is a global hegemon and a puppet master. We have discourses inside this semantic cluster that we research. The second one is what we call the decline of Europe. The third one is the venal elites of Bulgaria in particular. We have them in every country, especially in Eastern Europe and in Central Europe in particular. And we have the rise of Russia, which is a very, very big narrative, and we have divided it into 5 semiotic clusters, which are the following. The first one is Russia's increased political and spiritual might. Those are various narratives that regards Russia, that praise Russia in different ways. We have Russia's enemies. This is a discourse that antagonizes Russia's enemies in general. We have the power of Russian weapons. We all know that we have all seen publications about Russian weapons being in development and are just about to strike you dead. We just don't do it because we don't want to, but be very, very afraid, you know. We have the sanctions against Russia, a very common narrative that we have seen, describing the Western sanctions as useless and actually working against Europe and United States and Great Britain, and not doing anything to the Russian economy in general. And last, we have the discourse about Crimea and Ukraine. Those are narratives that insist that Crimea is Russian and that Ukraine is ruled by Nazis, basically. So we have this. This is our most basic results from what we have gathered as quantitative information about in Bulgarian media online. So we have for the last 10 years. What I need to say here is that we are using a system online monitoring of websites and blogs called Sensica. It gathers information from over 8,000 websites and blogs in Bulgarian online area. So this is the measurement that we have from 2013 up to 2022, the end of 2022, up to the 31st of December. So, unfortunately, not all of them are okay. Those are the basic narratives that we have. What you would see sparked is the narrative about Russia's enemies. The last one that I presented to you, the last slide, that is divided into five different clusters. Why is that? Well, the most obvious reason is the war in Ukraine. So what we need to do during a war is distract everybody and say that we are strong, say that you're being destroyed by somebody else, not us. So we have a big spike in that narrative. The other narratives are not changing too much. They're in constant movement for the last 5 to 6, 7 years. So here we have the same information during 2022. So this is the year the war started. You see an obvious spike in activity during the last days of February, when the war started. And then you have what you see is the spike at the end of the year, which I will explain in a bit. But first, you see the activity here right before the war starts. It's kind of low in the lights of events that are coming up. So the overall the overall thing that I should say here is that we have about 20 times more propaganda after the war on average on a monthly basis after the war started. So it's an active action, spreading propaganda, very active and very important, obviously, for Kremlin. So the spike that we see at the end of the year is due to what we call the machine of websites in Bulgarian internet area. It starts functioning in November 2022, and it's constituted of around 400 websites that are identical. They look the same way. They basically repost the same publications, and the programmers call them mushroom websites because they pop out of nothing and are not actually developed by people who are standing there and developing websites. They're just copies of copies of copies of copies. That's why we call them mushroom websites, and that's why we call them a machine, because it's actually a propaganda machine. They have common domains. I think there are 6 of them, 6 domains that have gathered all the websites in the machine, and they repost various articles on all kinds of topics, from sports to celebrities, and right there amongst them Russian propaganda for some reason. So, what you see here is the difference between activity between online activity in Bulgarian on the Bulgarian internet with the machine and without the machine. So this is 18. We have this normal activity. Let's say we have the beginning of the war, and then we have a decline. Although a decline means 20 times more articles previous month before the war, and this is where the machine starts working, and it see how much, how many more articles we have with working in comparison to the normal activity without those websites that have been developed in the spur of the moment, let's say. So it has a big impact. It impacts about 1/3 of articles in Bulgarian online media, which is quite a lot. Those are millions of articles on a monthly basis. So this is basically how the propaganda machine works in Bulgaria, Russian propaganda machine. And now I'm going to tell you some things about how it mirrors smaller countries, in particular the case of North Macedonia, in accordance to the Bulgarian discourse. So this is more of qualitative approach towards this question, and we understand that this discourse goes through the discourse of sovereignty. We discussed North Macedonia, we discussed Ukraine through the lens of sovereignty, and what we have done in my team, we have looked for articles in a Bulgarian website, very famous Bulgarian website called Pogled Info. It's one of the main hubs of Russian propaganda in Bulgaria. It's a very popular website. It has a TV channel. Yeah, you can see interviews with local speakers of propaganda. You see interviews with with various supporters of the Russian point of view, so-called. They do analytical work, not just reposting things from TASS or other media or agency. So to get to the point, how do Russian propaganda understand sovereignty? A sovereign country is one that can basically oppose the United States and what we call the collective West. The United States, NATO, European Union, European institutions. Which is not very logical for somebody who knows what sovereignty is, but this is how the propaganda machine understands it and tries to convey its meaning, changing its meaning. A sovereign power is one that is independent not only of external factors, but also from internal factors. How does that happen? Well, internal factors are regarded as external factors, and we have a whole big narrative about that in Bulgaria, which we have thoroughly researched. But I won't get into that now because it's a whole new deal. We have what we call we have some liberal figures in Bulgaria, liberal figures in politics, liberal communities. We have NGOs. We have what you've heard and probably made fun of, sorsoids. Those are organizations allegedly sponsored by George Soros. In this conspiracy logic that I presented to you in the first slide. And what Russian propaganda does with such figures is say that anyone who is uncomfortable for the narrative is presented as a conduit of foreign affairs, a foreign influence, and a puppet of external affairs. So what we have is liberal elites who are supposed to be practicing foreign influence, so to speak, in Bulgarian politics. So I just want to give you an example, a quotation from one of the articles that we have read on Pogled.info, which is very very descriptive of what the meaning that I'm trying to convey. It goes like this: a small republic, Georgia. You remember there was some trouble in Georgia a couple of months ago. Georgia decided that it should live like the USA, to have sovereignty, independence in foreign policy, liberal values. Teach us, they said, America, to be like you. This address was a fatal mistake. It says, Georgia is now on the verge of being thrown into the furnace of war with Russia, led by the West. So this quote roughly represents the meaning that is conveyed through this concept of sovereignty that Russian propaganda tries to convey. And at the end, I'm going to tackle the issue of North Macedonia. And in the general picture, this is the issue of the enlargement of the European Union, and how Russian propaganda represents the North Macedonian matter in a sense. It represents the Ukraine issue during the war. So we have some analogies, structural analogies between both countries, North Macedonia and Ukraine. And on the other hand, we have similarities between Bulgaria and Russia. So we have been helped, in quotation marks, by this conspiracy theorist, one of the authors in this website called Ivan Spiritonov, who is an author there. And we have 5 similarities that I want to, and I will finish with that. We have 5 similarities between both cases, Russia, Ukraine, and Bulgaria and North Macedonia, which will convey the meaning that I'm trying to describe here. So first, we have all those who do not understand why Russia attacked Ukraine and Bulgaria's disputes with Macedonia are victims of years-old propaganda, that the command post of which is neither in our country nor in Macedonia or Ukraine. So we have this external oh my God, I'm forgetting words now. Okay, so influence, yeah, sorry, thank you. We have this external influence here right in point 1. The second one goes like this. The task of this Anglo-Saxon, now we know where it comes from, of this Anglo-Saxon propaganda is to create and consolidate a non-existent nation. Ukraine in one example and North Macedonia in the other. They're the same thing. They are non-existent according to this propaganda. Third point, this non-existent, artificial and newly invented nation must declare itself to be something more than its neighbors. So what the Russian propaganda says is that Ukraine says we are more developed than Russia, we are not like you, we are superior. And it conveys the same notion in the North Macedonia-Bulgaria discourse. It says, well, North Macedonians say that Bulgaria is not as good as us, you are superior than they are. They both declare superiority over their allegedly superior big brother, so to say. Number 4, this happens when the closest neighbors are declared the biggest enemies of Ukraine and Macedonia, respectively Russia and Bulgaria. Ukraine is turned into anti-Russia and Macedonianism is anti-Bulgarianism. The new identity is forged through hatred for Russians and respectively towards Bulgarians. And point number 5 is the feeling of ethnic and racial superiority that is acquired through the most unscrupulous theft of the history of the neighbors. So we have our sentiment here, we have the history discourse that is being used in this propaganda machine, and the overall conclusion that we can take just from this article in particular, just from this one, is that just like Ukraine, North Macedonia is presented as a non-existent nation, a quasi-nation, if you say, and it's also an anti-Bulgarian project of the global hegemon, which is point 1 in our conspiracy logic of Russian propaganda. So yeah, this is from me. Thank you very much. No, don't do that.
Thank you, Valentin. And you forgot something else. Yeah, in the narratives of superiority. The global hegemony on the Bulgarian side, on the large Bulgarian side, is constructed by the Serbian influence. The Serbian narrative. Don't forget that. Yeah. Don't forget that the global hegemony is basically 80% the Serbian influence. Which is fun. Yeah. Which is fun. Thank you, Valentin, for this. Sorry for the side note. Next we have our co-host, Mr. Jure.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, firstly, I would like to express my thanks to Valentin for delivering a brilliant analysis of the discourse of our present-day government and their followers, because really they use more or less the same arguments in the explanation of international relations. So the aim of my presentation will be to compare the experiences of Slovakia and Macedonia with the problematic nation-state formation, and also to identify to what extent the Slovakia's experience in improving relations with its neighbors can serve as an example of good practices for North Macedonia. Given that the historically contingent conflict in Greece has been concluded for the time being by the so-called Prespa Agreement, on the basis of which Greece ended its blockage of Macedonia's accession process to the EU and NATO, and Macedonian-Albanian relations were concluded by the so-called Ohrid agreements, the primary focus will be on the Macedonian-Bulgarian relations. This is to say, the main obstacle of the further progress in Macedonia-EU negotiations process is the Bulgaria's double veto in December 2020 and June 2021 on opening North Macedonia's accession talks with the European Union. So we must say that on one hand, the European integration processes are opening the new opportunities for cooperation by the weakening of the role of state borders. But at the same time, the construction of nationalizing states is opening up both unresolved and new conflicts, especially in the relations between neighboring states, which these states have to redefine. In fact, paradoxically, EU accession process, EU enlargement process brought the new waves of nationalisms and new waves of interstate conflicts in our region. Part of this self-identification processes in the formation of political communities is the process of defining oneself in a relation to the so-called to the other, while one of the key attributes and legitimizing formulas of collective identities is the consciousness of common past lived in solidarity and of shared plans for the future. So according to Anthony Smith, it is the existence of codified unified history that distinguishes a nation from other traditionally politically unintegrated communities, the so-called ethnicities. The history or historical narrative is also distinct from the narratives of other political communities. So it means, according to Miroslav Hroch, that to have a history means to exist in a historical continuity as an unquestionable whole. At the same time, however, according to him, so-called national history was written in the relation to the history of other nations, of other communities, especially to those which the national historical argument as justification of national program was related. So therefore, of course, history plays a specific and peculiar role in such strategic decisions as the joining of European integration, although it was initially in the early 1990s, this process was described as the process of the ending of history by Fukuyama. So the issue is that from the historical point of view, Slovakia and Macedonia faced some very unexpected parallels in their nation-building process. So both these countries try to explain or reinvent the tradition of their statehood from the distant past. Why Slovakia from Great Moravia by the revival of the cult of Cyril and Methodius. On the other hand, North Macedonia, with reference to the tradition of the Macedonian Empire of the Alexander the Great. Both Slovakia and Macedonia started their process of transforming into the cultural and state nations later compared to their neighbors. It means either in the first half of 19th century, in case of Macedonia after the Second World War, and they also are delayed with the process of formation of the nation state. In fact, both nation states emerged only in 1990s. Slovak nationalism developed itself mostly in a competition and in opposition to Hungarian nationalism, but also in some extent to the Czech one, and also not only in competition with them, but also on the periphery of these nationalisms. North Macedonian nationalism emerged also on the periphery of several nationalist projects, Bulgarian, Greek, and Serbian one, but also Albanian. On the other hand, both our constitutive others, it means Hungary and Bulgaria, share very similar historical traumas. Hungary claims state law continuity with the legal continuity with the Kingdom of Hungary established already before 1918. And the peace treaty signed in Trianon, which became a part of the so-called Versailles settlement and the settlement of Europe after the Second World War, is regarded in Hungary as a national tragedy. And it not only means the loss of territory, but also a fact that a large number of ethnic Hungarians became, in fact, foreigners for Hungary because they lived in neighboring states. And the way how to overcome this trauma was found firstly as in territorial revisionism, and now by so-called peaceful reunification of Hungarians across the borders. But in fact, it is also, this program contains some elements of expanding state sovereignty of the country outside its official state borders. For Bulgaria, a similar moment was the peace treaty in Berlin in 1878, which was a revision of the previous peace treaty of San Stefano, which envisaged the existence of a greater Bulgaria, containing also the territories of Thrace, South and Dobruja, and what is now North Macedonia. So similarly to the so-called Trianon trauma, one of the key principles of the Bulgarian foreign policy until the end of the Second World War was the idea of Greater Bulgaria, also conceived as an idea of reunification of ethnically or allegedly ethnically Bulgarian territories, including Macedonia. And of course, it could be considered in both cases as a kind of geopolitical obsession, and it had also a significant influence of the political behavior of both countries during the global conflicts. What's going on in Slovak, Hungarian, and Bulgarian Macedonian relations? Both their conflicts or their disputes are taking place between the states that claim the same geopolitical orientation. It means on the level of the global politics, they declare their relations as friendly and to be political allies. In both cases, these countries feel themselves see their future in European Union and NATO. What about the nature of the conflict on the current situation of Macedonia and Slovakia? Slovakia was established in 1993 after the so-called Belvedere divorce with Czech Republic. Why it was possible? Simply because that time there was no more any feeling of ethnic unity between Czechs and Slovaks. This doctrine of ethnically based Czechoslovakism simply disappeared, and there were also no territorial disputes. The same took place during the dissolution of Yugoslavia between Macedonia and Serbia. Simply in this case, unlike in the case of, for example, Bosnia or Croatia, it was also de facto kind of velvet divorce. On the other hand, Bulgaria's policy towards Macedonia is framed by the so-called state recognition, but non-recognition of the Macedonian identity as a language or national identity as such. So from this perspective, however, this approach of Bulgaria could be compared, for example, to this one of Russian Federation, who also denied the very existence of distinctive Ukrainian nation and distinctive Ukrainian language. So, of course, in case of Slovakia, this primary sources of the conflict is mostly this lack of respect to the equal role of the partner from the side of Hungary. The similar thing we can observe in the case of Bulgarian-Macedonian relations. Simply, Macedonia feels itself as a kind of older brother, as a protector of Macedonia, and as a key to the European integration of this country. So also some analogies could be also identified, for example, in citizenship policy between both Bulgaria and Hungary apply an ethnic principle in granting of the citizenship that is contrary to the interests of the neighboring states concerned, while refusing them to negotiate their policies with them. Like Slovakia, North Macedonia also perceives its neighbors' policy very negatively. Hungary's policy of uniting nations across the national borders has a long tradition, including to the dispute of the so-called status law, Hungarian status law, or law on Hungarians living abroad from 2001, which the Hungarian side applies extraterritorially. It means in the form of direct financial transfers to ethnic Hungarians, citizens of the neighboring states living abroad. A similar form of building direct institutional links between the Hungarian states and members of Hungarian communities abroad was the establishment of the, for example, Carpathian Basin Deputies Forum, which brought together ethnic Hungarian deputies from Hungary and neighboring countries with the status of an advisory body to the Hungarian National Assembly. Regarding the solution of conflicts, disputes, in case of both Slovakia and North Macedonia, it is evident that despite of Europeanization of their international and foreign policies, the ethnic factor continues to play a significant role in the internal and foreign policy in these regions. The common element in both cases is the internationalization of bilateral disputes. Neither Bulgaria nor Hungary is pushing the issue of border revision, but in both cases we can speak about policy of the soft revisionism or also irredentism. Also, Hungary tried to block the EU accession process of Czech Republic and Slovakia in 2001 and in 2002 by the opening of the controversial issues from the past, by the opening of the so-called Beneš decrees. What was there were, however, some different circumstances because even the then EU member states were not interested in raising the issue, the conflicting issues, and they abandoned the considered plan of the small EU enlargement. It means enlargement focused only to very few countries such as Hungary, Slovenia, and probably Estonia. This plan was replaced by the project of Big Bang. It means big EU enlargement containing 10 EU candidate countries. Probably also this fear of the raising of old historically defined territorial disputes, political disputes, was also one of the impulse why finally EU adopted the decision in favor of the great enlargement. Also, in case of Macedonian-Bulgarian relations, some institutional measures have been taken to improve the relations between two states. One of the first steps was the adoption of the so-called Joint Declaration in 1999, but also later attempts to solve complicated bilateral issues, for example, with Greece and also with Bulgaria. So what will be the concluding remarks? While Slovak-Hungarian relationship after 1918 was transformed from a dispute over the recognition of the uniqueness of Slovaks as a nation and thus a political actor to a dispute over the status of national minorities or state borders, the Bulgarian-Macedonian dispute concerns the recognition of the identification of Macedonian population as a community distinct from Bulgarians. In this respect, these disputes are of a different nature. What they have in common is an absence of the respect on the part of Bulgaria or Hungary, respectively, for the sovereignty of the neighboring states. As the issue of the status of minority abroad is one of the highly sensitive topics of internal politics in both states, and similarly the so-called Hungarian card in Slovakia and the Bulgarian card in North Macedonia, the escalation of the above conflicts depends on the dynamics of internal political development in the respective countries. For these reasons, there is a little chance that the change in the positions of the two states could occur in the short term. The Bulgarian-Macedonian disputes rather resembled the Slovak-Czech disputes in terms of its content. It resulted in Slovak-Czech case. It resulted in velvet divorce because simply the formula of Czechoslovakism, Czechoslovak national ethnic or language unity was already totally exhausted. In case of Bulgarian-Macedonian relations, however, I think that there cannot be any talk of reconciliation, as the two sides, despite their different interests, did not consider each other enemies, and there were no varying conflicts between them. The Slovak-Hungarian relationship has a different character, which contains also some elements of reconciliation, but also especially the mutual discourse about their past also contained some unificatory elements. The Europeanization of bilateral conflicts brings some positive effects in case of Slovak-Hungarian relations, because European Union delivered a very clear message that these disputes are not a matter of EU accession. Both countries, however, at that time were in the same position in the relations to the European Union. Both of them were on the same level as EU candidate countries. However, in case of Bulgaria and Macedonia, these countries are in different situation, because Bulgaria already is an EU member and it shows its power as an EU member state. And in fact, Bulgaria managed to nationalize or even Bulgarianize the foreign policy of EU or EU policy of enlargement. So Bulgaria can act from the position of the stronger partner. Raising these conflicts, however, is undermining the positive effects of EU enlargement process in the region, which is why Bulgaria's course of action ultimately represents a de-Europeanization factor in Balkans. In the context of EU integration, and especially in the pre-accession process, it was crucial for Slovakia to communicate with relevant partners at several levels, with EU institutions, with the member state, and especially with the neighboring countries. And it is, I think, main lesson for Macedonia from the part of Slovakia. And another crucial moment is that Slovakia, in spite of some significant problems in 1990s, managed to integrate Hungarian minority political representation into the decision-making process in the Slovak republics. So Hungarian political parties were involved in the ruling coalition. They Hungarian card as a card in this ethnic cleavage between ethnic Slovaks and ethnic Hungarians in Slovak domestic politics simply doesn't work anymore, or at least that time doesn't work last 10 years. We will see what there will be in the future. So what are the main lessons? Because I cannot give any concrete recommendations or any concrete conclusions, that simply each country brings to the European Union its own image of the world and also own image of the neighboring states. And all countries, all EU member states have simply a different expectation from the EU accession. EU is not only a pure modernization tool, modernization project, but also as it is an instrument of foreign policy of its member state. It is shown by Bulgaria recently, but also, for example, by Poland in the case of shaping EU's Eastern policy. So it is nothing new. It means also these simply these two facts are means that these facts simply are affecting also the nature of bilateral relations of between the EU member states. So the EU membership as such doesn't mean automatically reconciliation. It can work in a long-term perspective, but as we can see even now, sometimes this EU enlargement process is provoking the new conflicts between states or escalating the existing. Simply these national stereotypes, these
Sorry for this, little problems with the internet. Oh, no, I'm not. Can you hear me? No, I'm not. Yeah, there is muted. Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you, Juraj. Again, sorry for the technical difficulty at the end. I will not take a lot of time because after me we have our respondents, Mr. Lawrence and Mr. Zingle. I will concentrate on the initiative that we as an institute thanks to the International Visegrad Fund, are doing it in North Macedonia and Bulgaria, now second year. It started with the Avenue of Cooperation project. Then the situation was, I think, a little bit more normal in the communication, sense. There were initiatives from Macedonian and Bulgarian side to find a solution, and so on and so on. So we started from that position. Of course, the both societies were polarized, and we started slowly to build on the process where the spotlight was always on our joint ventures, so to say. Thanks to those initiatives, thanks to those interviews and individual work of the consortium and our friends, we end up with this informal group of a Macedonian-Bulgarian friendship club, which are people who are working from both sides of the corner, depolarizing the public. Then we had this turn now, this year, in the face of the French proposal, which is not a French proposal, it's a European Union proposal. We have a slight turn in the atmosphere inside the North Macedonian public. And most funny part of it, we have this still public and public intellectuals that now are going with the narrative that Macedonia didn't start the negotiations with the European Union, either though 8 times von der Leyen came here, not only her, but all of the diplomatic corps, all of the are saying, yeah, you started the negotiation, but no, we are not trusting that. But now, slowly, we are building, not only through this project, but through the individual work of our partners, are slowly working towards calming down the situation. So the Alliances for EU concentrates on finding the good example of bridging this gap. I'm not talking about going to history or so on and so on. No, we're concentrating on their stories, their concrete stories, their private stories. So we done a lot of interviews with experts, with people from the culture, people from the political life, people from all around the public spheres, and we pair them, like from Macedonia and Bulgaria. And the results and the stories are quite interesting. We are showing off that we have the same problems, we have the same aspire, and so on and so on. So we are proving that the whole problem is not on this bottom level, it's on the upper level. Of course, again, we are faced with a lot of unexpected situation, like the war in Ukraine, the whole disinformation war that Valentin talks. But I think that we are making some progress towards the end goal, that is unblocking the enlargement process. Once the process is unblocked, it will be, the atmosphere will be more calm to discuss about all the hot issues that, and one plus thing that I must mention is that the focus shifted. The focus in the public eye shifted from the so-called the historic commission, which was, I think, a mistake at the first place to start with that. You know, and as probably a lot of you know, in the Balkans, we like to romanticize things. So we and victimize things, yeah, because if there is a historical commission, somebody must suffer. There is no way the both sides win. No, they must suffer. But once again, I want to take not only the International Visegrad Fund, but the four countries who are steering this towards the solution. The Visegrad Group is very active on resolving on this with their philosophy that the Western Balkans is Europe. There is no distinction whatsoever. I hope that at the end, not of this year, but maybe the start of the next, we will have a more suitable atmosphere to start the process of reconciliation between the two nations. Sorry, I didn't want to waste more time and from the discussion, because all of my brilliant colleagues before me said everything. I can speak only about how the process is doing inside North Macedonia. So that's for me. I'm opening the discussion with our both respondents, Mr. Lloyd. Can Mr. Tigel. Thank you.
Thank you, Risto. Thank you, everybody, those in the room and also online. So I get the task to kind of respond to the these very excellent presentations and good basis for food for thoughts that we have heard during the past hour and a half. My name is Jan Cingel. I'm representing Strategic Analysis think tank, which is based here in Slovakia, but we focus our research towards Western Balkans and Eastern Partnership countries. One of the topics that we deal with is also the EU enlargement or the policies that are around it, and I really enjoyed what my discussants were mentioning. For example, Spasimir's very sober view on the current status of the EU enlargement, where we see that it is actually in that end on one side because of the internal processes in the European Union, but on the other side, as you mentioned, candidates are mimicking that they want to join the EU, and we can see more and more countries of the Western Balkans basically more pretending that they want to join the European Union than really doing the reforms. The biggest example and the elephant in the room is Serbia, where you can see that actually the majority of the population is against the EU integration. So that's a big question mark. What to do with Serbia's accession processes? We see the political changes in the Montenegro, where we have a new government which is clearly pro-Serbian. So Montenegro will probably also go the direction of Serbia. There is an impasse in North Macedonia because of the external actor and because of the situation where the conditions for proceeding with the EU integration depends on the constitutional majority, which cannot be provided in the parliaments to change the constitution. But then there is a question, maybe discussion on our point of a discussion for our two colleagues from North Macedonia and Bulgaria. My fear is that even if the constitution is cleared, that there will be some more requests from Bulgaria's side. And it was very interesting, your point about the history committee, that it was kind of pushed backwards. Do you think that it can kind of resurface again? Because we know that there are plenty of other issues which Bulgaria raised and that were kind of pushed aside. that's the question, whether this kind of historical identity issues can be again resurfaced after North Macedonia changes its constitution, which it seems that it might be heading the direction, if not now, then after the elections next year. So that's the first one. Candidates mimicking. I will again help myself with Spasimir's view that candidates are mimicking kind of their that they want to join the European Union, but I would stress that this concerns only Western Balkans, because at the moment we can see the candidates with the drive, and that is Ukraine and Moldova. We saw the progress reports. Ukraine actually did more reforms than all Western Balkan sticks together this year, and Ukraine is under war. Moldova is also trying to do a lot. Georgia is in a different position. We know that the candidacy status is yet to be determined. There were 12 points that Georgia was supposed to fulfill. They fulfilled fully 3 of those conditions. 6 to 7 preliminarily, and the rest were not met. So the granting candidacy status to Georgia will be a political decision. If it will be done, then it will be based on the will of the people, because there is a huge support for the European integration in Georgia, whereas the current government of Georgia is as they say, pro-Georgian, but it means in many senses actually pro-Russian. And sliding away from the EU and the West, and using some of the narratives which actually Valentin was mentioning in terms of Bulgaria's pro-Russian in disinfo scene. So we can see some of the narratives not only in Tbilisi but also in Budapest, and now starting also here in Bratislava. Okay, another thing which is very important, and that is the internal situation in the EU that will lay the ground for the future enlargement. We can see that some more countries are turning more EU skeptic, let's call it that way. Like, for example, Slovakia now with the new government pursuing this sovereign policy. I liked really, Valentin, your views or explanations of these pro-Russian narratives, which are strengthening the point of view of sovereignty. What in fact they are meaning, they want the countries to be sovereign in their own right, to be alone, in order Russia can handle them easier. You can easier handle the countries one by one than when they are united in NATO, EU, etc. So we can see also yesterday there were elections in Netherlands, which ended up, as it seems, with the smashing victory of the anti-EU and anti-immigration Geert Wilders party. So we will see how the next government in Netherlands will look like, and if this will influence the also the EU enlargement policy, because we know that Netherlands has for a long period of time been this kind of a careful and skeptical member country, which was raising some really valid questions. But we will see now if those questions will still be pragmatic questions, or there will be some ideas that might be from the side of not that constructive approach. I liked very much also Michal's views on where we stand with the current EU enlargement, and the mentioning the North Macedonia's case, and how the situation is different from what we had in 2004 until 2007. Yes, there was this kind of a idea that we should coordinate, cooperate, and that was actually also the reason why Visegrad group was created, in order we help each other to get to the European Union. Unfortunately, we don't see this in the Western Balkans. On contrary, I think the issue of EU enlargement seems like to be one of yet another item of the internal political struggle. So the candidate countries are using the issue of EU membership as their own internal political agenda, and then it transforms into such things like, for example, Bulgaria blocking North Macedonia's accession. Now we see that also Greece is raising some bilateral issues with Albania, etc., etc. So the issue of EU enlargement seems to be one of another points of internal political discourse that is being used just to pursue own interests. That is the thing that we will have to cope, of course, with us as the member countries, but also the candidate countries. Okay. Momentum, that the momentum was lost because of the war in Ukraine, even that didn't help to move the enlargement agenda further. I would dare to say that maybe the momentum actually was created by Russia's aggression against Ukraine, because the process was stuck for many years, and now at least this year we can see these attempts to give candidacy status to Ukraine and Moldova, granting the candidacy status to Ukraine and Moldova, also granting the candidacy status to Bosnia and Herzegovina as a motivation for these countries to do the reforms. But we will see how long this window of opportunity will be open, because we know next year we will have EU parliamentary elections. So we don't know what will be the composition of the new European Parliament, and from that reflection will be the new Commission. Of course, key positions within the Commission, who will be the High Representative for the foreign affairs in brackets, who will be responsible for enlargement, who will be the leader of the Commission, leader of the Council. So these are the questions that will be solved second semester next year. So maybe the momentum is now, and then maybe first quarter next year. But then everything will be about the political struggle, about political campaigning before the European elections, and then creation of the new Commission that we need to take into consideration. So that can delay the process further. And then, needless to say, the U.S. elections before the end of the year, those will be also indicative and might show the way how this kind of involvement of EU and the West, if we call it this way, in the Western Balkans can be influenced. I really enjoyed also the presentation about the Russia's propaganda in Bulgaria by Valentin. We do a lot, our organization, about the disinformation in the Western Balkans. Frankly, I was not dealing that much with Bulgaria, so for me this was really interesting and really inspiring. Yes, I wanted to ask, maybe as one of the next questions to discuss is, what is the position of the new government in Bulgaria, which was created 5 months ago? We know it's a broad coalition. It has a very, very interesting mandate. So how this new government is viewing the EU enlargement process, and do you think whether it will be enough for North Macedonia to adapt the constitutional changes, if there will be not, again, another topics like identity, language, history, and all these things, if they will not pop up again? Thank you to Juraj also for talking about how here in Central Europe we laid ground for good neighborhood relations between Slovakia and Czechia, and especially Slovakia and Hungary, and if this could be a model for kind of a coordination, and then at least coordination of the policies and creation of a better neighborly relations between North Macedonia and Bulgaria. And it was also interesting for me to hear about the project that Aristos organization is pursuing in North Macedonia and Bulgaria for building this this trust between the societies and civil societies and experts from Bulgaria and Macedonia to create kind of a grassroots basis for the understanding. And as I mentioned, it would be interesting for me to hear whether these historical issues cannot again reappear somewhere on the radar, either on one side or the other side. On the North Macedonia side, we know there will be elections which will probably be won by VMRO. So what will that mean for the EU in enlargement or the integration appetite of North Macedonia? So I will stop here. Lots of questions. I have some more, so let's have discussion. Thank you.
Just a brief explanation from my side. Nobody can't guarantee there will be no blockage from the Bulgarian side, even though there is a statement 1 week ago, yesterday, that Bulgaria has no other demands towards North Macedonia. And we are also forgetting that the first state that blocks the enlargement of North Macedonia was France. So that means, I'm not saying that the France or Bulgarians are to blame, but it's an ongoing process. So we are not sure, and I personally don't like to vilify Bulgaria, that's the only obstacle. We have great displeasure from the Dutch ambassador about the judiciary reform in North Macedonia. Okay. That means that maybe when we come to that cluster, then the Dutch will block until we figure this out. So it's an ongoing process. We don't like to think about further things. Nobody can guarantee you it's an evolving process. But the momentary position of the new Bulgarian government is no, we have no other demands, which is, you're some kind reproducing the main narrative of the opposition. No. Like I said, you have von der Leyen from the stance of the parliament saying you're in the negotiation with the European Union, we are opening clusters and so on, and the position is no. Or this romantic thing, they say that they will not have, but are we sure? Which is for me childish. It's not serious to discuss at this moment. At this moment, we have this condition, which is a European condition. It's not a Bulgarian condition. It's not a French condition. It's the European Parliament condition that we must deliver so the process can run smoothly. We are opening clusters. We have the primary screening process. So all the elements of negotiations are in phase. So that is my little remark. Sorry to waste your time, but I want to be crystal clear that this is an ongoing process. There is nobody in this wide world that can give you a guarantee that no other country or Bulgaria, I'm not saying Bulgaria, I'm saying any of the other European countries can do the same. It depends on our devotion to the process of opening clusters with the new methodology and so on and so on. So it's yeah.
To continue what Risto says, the new Bulgarian government that was constituted 5 months ago, it is 100% pro-EU, pro-Western. To give you some additional information, in the last 2 years, we had 5 preliminary elections in Bulgaria for parliament. 5. I think that's a world record. I'm not sure. It's definitely a European record. So we've had 5 elections in 2 years' time. They were very problematic because of one particular reason. There was this domination of this party, which was allegedly pro-European, pro-Western, called GERB in Bulgarian. You've probably heard of it. Citizens for the European Development of Bulgaria. So this party called the Citizens European Development, whatever. For 12 years, it was standing on, so to speak, both chairs. One chair West, one chair Russia. So we built the so-called Russian pipeline for gas to serve Putin's interest in Europe. So in that sense, they actually made in some way the war in Ukraine more possible. So to say that this party was pro-Western is very, very problematic. And we in Bulgaria know that very well. And everybody who has any interest in the public life of Bulgaria does know that. So we have a problem with that, being pro-Western of this party. We have other parties that have always been in power in some way that are now turning very, very aggressively pro-West in order to keep themselves alive. So we have a new constitution of politics in Bulgaria for the last 5 months. We have the two parties, main parties that have gathered in one coalition that are liberal and pro-Western in their core, that are naturally pro-Western. So they, with their mandate, they had the parliament. They made the parliament in the last in 5 months ago, and the other two parties are supporting them. So those two parties that I'm talking about, GERB on one end and the DPS, the movement for freedoms and liberties and democracy. Yes. So they're trying to move away from that image of being pro-Russian or nationalistic in some sense. So they're trying to westernize themselves, just like GERB. And in some way, the war in Ukraine exacerbated that process. So that's ironic in some way. The same thing, I think, not the same thing, obviously, but a process of exacerbated westernization is happening in Ukraine because of the war, and probably because of the threat in Moldova. I'm not sure about that because I haven't elaborated on that. So we have a government in Bulgaria that is relatively stable because of its pro-EU and pro-West need for development, so to say. So we can say that we have this view that is confident as long as this parliament is standing, this government is standing. If we have new elections in the next 1 year, which can happen anytime, things might change. But in my own point of view, I don't think that this is going to happen in the next couple of years. I think we're having a strong response to the election of North Macedonia in the European Union for now, because one reason part of the parliament is in its core pro-West and pro-EU and pro-liberal, and the other part is wants to move away from its image of a pro-Russian kind of two-way mirror political party, and they want to wash their image basically. So I think that they will need to support anything that the EU says and what they do and what the pro-liberal community actually wants and needs. And this is North Macedonia on its track to the European Union, basically. Yeah. Exactly. So I think this is going to stay as long as this parliament is staying. Yeah. This prime minister and the next prime minister who's going to be Maria Gabriel. I think she was. It is. It is. Mm-hmm.
You know, and now we're chasing to solve the problem before an election.
Hopefully, hopefully we won't have elections in the next couple of years. We don't know that. Oh yeah, all right, okay. It did. It did. We always have nationalism and right-wing populism. Yeah.
Once the elections are great, all the parties, especially in Macedonia and Bulgaria, not especially, but most visibly, are starting to play this national card.
Yeah.
Some national egotism, which is untypical. And I'm not talking about the Macedonian electoral side, we're talking about Albanians and so on and so on. So, because the subject is so fragile, I think that from our side, the Macedonian parties have a sense not to go minus 1 to 2 parties, which are the two major Macedonian parties must be careful what is the authority, especially towards Bulgaria, and now when the situation there is more favorable for finding the solution. So it's very important to note that it's very important to act now while the whole situation has a good ground.
Miłosz has raised his hand.
Came back to the table and it was good for the mobilization of the team.
Yeah. Miłosz.
Hello, everyone. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. My name is Miloš Pavković, and I'm working as a researcher at the European Policy Center. And I have one quick question and a short reflection on what the discussant mentioned. So I would like to start with what Spasimir talked about, the necessity for this caught my attention specifically, actually, potential for using the enlargement as a tool for internal reform and potentially for it to fail and use it as a tool for federalization. And also, I would like to reflect on the Bulgarian veto and all other vetoes regarding North Macedonia that we had in past decade. So basically, I wanted to ask all today panelists what they think about the stage accession model that was recently proposed by the European Policy Center from Belgrade and Center for European Policy Studies in Brussels, because it specifically advocates for resolving these two issues that we talked about. So basically, it enables two processes in parallel, so internal reforms of the European Union and the enlargement process. So it goes away from the binary approach, either one country is all in or all out of the European Union. It basically argues for horizontal gradual integration of the countries, of the candidate countries into the EU, into the decision making, into work with institutions. It argues, advocates for increase of financial and technical support based on the, of course, of reform orientation. And also it argues for introduction of qualified majority voting in the enlargement policy, basically stripping off the veto rights of member states and you know, trying to resolve the issue of any future blockade of any member state of any candidate country in the future. So I would like just to ask today's panelists what is their opinion about this model, and do they think this would be a good starting point for you know, addressing these issues that we talked about today. Thank you very much.
Partner, I think that you will call.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Milos, for your question. I hope I got it right. I think you were reflecting to this report, Sailing at the High Seas, right? Am I correct? The CEPS report about from the 12 authors, but that was the CEPS had a different report.
So yes, this is actually different, but they are complementary to a degree. But the CEPS and European Policy Center had also their own initiative called the Template for Stage Accession.
Yes, thank you very much. I will start with answering your question, and then I will take the opportunity to address a couple of the issues that appeared here. Well, I am, that's of course my personal opinion, but I'm extremely skeptical about these proposals. I see them more as an attempt to prepare the playground for a discussion and to drop ideas that can serve as a point of reference for identifying the limits of the possible when it comes to the next EU reform. But if I have to be sincere, the context of these proposals is actually a recipe for disintegration. Because if you look at the content and the logic, it tries to put together several things that are simply non-compatible. You cannot deepen integration by creating different tiers in which you consciously exclude those who constitute an obstacle. Therefore, you naturally disintegrate. And at the same time, you provide, if we look at this idea of these tiers, you provide an opportunity actually for countries that will probably never make it to the EU, because the idea of this, let's say, partial integration, participation in particular policies, or benefiting from various options, will actually encourage more skeptical governments to pursue a similar option and create tiers that will actually dismantle the EU. So I am personally very skeptical about this logic, and I'm afraid that this logic kind of aiming to resolve the problem of unanimity in practical terms will throw the baby together with the bathtub. Because if we want to keep the integration process moving, we need to rely, whether we like it or not, on the agreement of all the member states. And secondly, the problem, as I tried to point out, is that what is my sincere concern is that the enlargement policy is no longer an enlargement policy. It is a neighborhood management policy. Instead of the European neighborhood policy turning into a part of the enlargement policy, we see actually the opposite. We see the softening of the enlargement policy in the search and constant escapes. If you look at the arguments, most of the old EU member states leaders, they are literally reluctant to take responsibility for enlargement. They are afraid of the reactions of their own societies. And in that respect, I will refer here to the fantastic comments of Jan to our presentations, talking about Ukraine and Moldova, in the context that I think this is a theoretical problem of the European integration, that it actually goes where there is no resistance. Whenever there is resistance, it kind of tries to find another way. And in that sense, Ukraine and Moldova today are considered to be these kind of front runners, because everybody knows that their front running at this point practically means nothing. As long as we have basic issues unresolved, questions related to territorial integrity, questions related to what will be the final shape of these countries, we know that there is no perspective for membership. Therefore, we make symbolical gestures, and they are important. I do not question that. I understand why we need that. This is an element of keeping in orbit, but that doesn't bring us closer. What is even more concerning is that the enlarged waiting room, it was produced counter effects in the Western Balkans. You're absolutely right about what you described when it comes to Serbia, Montenegro. But I would go even further to say that we tend to believe that these political elites in the waiting room, they are constantly waiting to make it. They found already new ways of existence in the 21st century, which the EU refuses to see, because unfortunately, within the EU, there is no willingness for enlargement. And when we talk, I absolutely agree with the argument that Jure was mentioning about how the group enlargement resolved the Slovak-Hungarian matters. Because if you take any single of those countries piece by piece in the Balkans, each one of them has enough reasons to have problems with each other that will be used exactly in the same way as Bulgaria. So there is only one solution, and it is enlargement as fast as possible. Of course, and now I know I'm already talking absolute heretics and blasphemy, because the reliance on the rule of law in a situation in which you have countries like Bulgaria and Romania in the EU is a false image. You try to convince certain countries that they have to behave better than other countries that are in the EU. So what is the logic of this mechanism? Secondly, when it comes to the Western Balkans, we talk about a population almost average the size of Romania. So this is not an obstacle from economic perspective. It is an obstacle, and here the purely constructivist explanation of unwillingness and internal problems of the EU that are blocking this policy. So I'm sorry, and then because Riste was also raising certain arguments, I absolutely agree. We observe a constant change of constellation, and we try to find the better moments and to prevent the worst moments when it comes to the enlargement policy. But I think that what was efficient for the enlargement policy was the determination to achieve the goal. Today, this determination is non-existent. No one really wants to talk about this happening. I'll give you one tiny example. In the previous experiences of enlargement, the European institutions were extremely cautious in providing end dates of enlargement, because the end date is a clear signal for ultimate mobilization. What we have now is exactly the opposite. When you give an end date at a date with a girlfriend and you say, hey, in 7 years we can marry, I guarantee you that you will not marry. Because within these 7 years, too many things can happen and you will definitely discourage that. So what we see today is actually a very serious, very deep problem with the enlargement policy, stemming from the internal problems of the EU and the fact that the national elites in non-EU member states that are in the waiting room found new models of operation, and we need to break this stalemate. Probably the solution should be a genuine prioritization of the enlargement policy. unfortunately, I'm pessimistic about the current possibility for this prioritization. Thank you very much.
Regarding to this issue of mimicking this EU accession, this is not just the case of Western Balkan states, because now we can mention several cases when even current EU members are just mimicking to be the EU members. Of course, they don't speak about the withdrawal from the EU, but they rather prefer kind of integration Europe a la carte. Yeah. So to take some sweets, some bonbons, but to not to take other issues. Hungary, Slovakia, Slovenia under Janez Janša, and so on. Probably next elections in Bohemia, in Czech Republic, who knows? But also today, last day's elections in Netherlands. So this is not just the issue of new EU member states. And so this thing, and also Balkan states are simply imitating the policy, for example, of Viktor Orban. On the other hand, what is the EU's expectation from Western Balkans? Because nobody wants to say that there will be no EU enlargement anymore. Also, Balkan states are saying, yes, we are for an EU enlargement. And I do not fully agree that they really see some perspective to live fully outside the European Union, because for example, of Montenegrin experience with the cooperation with China. Yeah, this was simply economic disaster for this country. This was so China is probably not the alternative for European Union anymore, or only in some particular cases. What about the prospect to replace European Union with Russia? Even the most pro-Russian politician Alexander Vucic doesn't want to replace the European integration model by for example, some kind of membership of Serbia in the Union State of Russia and Belarus, because of very low potential of such model of cooperation. So they are simply preferring probably this kind of liminal position between the being of EU member and being outside the integration processes. Yeah. So on the other hand, this is also a result of the development model applied not only in Western Balkan countries, but also in post-communist countries, such as the neoliberal model. Now we can see there are a lot of direct Western investments in these countries, but the development is based rather on the cheap and not too much qualified labor force. And this model, of course, will come into crisis after the EU enlargement. And even in Serbia, it is widely discussed that the immediate EU accession will cause the increase of the flow of economic immigrants from Serbia to the West. And it is already a big problem for national economy. However, of course, this flow of labor immigrants is continuing even now. So this is, but this is also one of issues we must take into account, that this liminal position is also quite profitable for local leaders, and probably also for some for the Western business, because just who can provide political stability in Serbia if not Vučić? Yeah, this is I'm afraid this phenomenon of Vučić, for example, is also a result of very favorable policy of Western countries towards him, at least during the first periods of his government. And also this, and another thing is also, and here I'm critical also to the European Union representatives. This model of solution of Kosovo crisis simply contributed to establish the network of countries, of revisionist states in Europe. Russian Federation is obvious, and we see the consequences just now in Ukraine. Hungary, historically, and now Serbia. Yeah, so this is we must also take into account these moments.
Thank you, Jure. Maybe one more questions because we are out of time. Yeah, you can.
Okay, so German embassy is not here, so luckily I can speak. And the you know, yeah, we discussed this with Spasimin and with Marta many times, and Marta is always our colleague from Warsaw is always complaining to me that I always see the problems as from the perspective of organized crime and dirty money in the region. And look, well, if you need a diplomat, please, let me know, or green card. As my Albanian friends, there is no problem that has there is no solution with there is problem with no solution. So no, but I have 3 points. First is and this leads me to this organized crime and the flow of money. Come on, it's so it's very easy. It's just following money. Borisov, the biggest guardian of European integration, as the biggest ally of German CDU. Come on, member of EPP. What else? What else? There are simply more important things than this enlargement, that, because there are money in stake. And of course, if it is about money, then different circles of influences are exercising their influence, and this is pretty simple, and it's no conspiracy. This is just the way how it works, basically. So just it's also, let's be honest, from the European perspective. If we actually, and I attempted, then I gave up to make some substantial research on the political parties, this ties, EPP, Social Democrats, German Chamber of Commerce, how they exercise their power, how they do the tax evasion, how they misuse the local representatives for their own profits, etc. It's like huge, of course, and then we get backfired from German political foundations talking about the European integration, organizing events in fancy hotels throughout the region, etc. So the story as usual. But the point So that's one point. The second point is and or relates to that, as sort of Balkan anecdote that it's very hard to make Roma population to radicalize them through Islam. Well, but on the other hand, 50 euros banknote can do a miracle. So it's again, if there is interest, if these representatives, the stakeholders, if they see the tangible money on horizon, the same how what happened with in Central Europe, the whole decade after the EU accession, it was about tangible benefits from the membership. That's it. Of course, the story matters, but they became Europeanized because they saw the real benefits that was on the streets. And it's again, just to see things a bit more pragmatic. And I'm not complaining about it. And the last point is the first-hand experience from Skopje in regards to the bilateral relations between Bulgaria and Macedonia, which Czech embassy made the initiative towards not a reconciliation, but simply building trust between Bulgaria and Macedonia. And there was one very strange thing that in the whole process. Let's say the political diplomatic deal was that Brussels, the DG gave a green light to make the process go. And the biggest obstacle in the whole process was that between lines, the representatives of the EU delegation in Skopje said, we will do it because our bosses told us to do so, but we don't agree with the substance of the project, with the initiative. So, going further, this relates to the point I made. Not to expect anything coming from EU institutions, and this goes to the Spasimir's point. And we see it more and more that the whole initiative and the restructuring of the European Union will be about motivations, political and the political vision of key member states of the European Union. And we see how the European Union develops. This will be the way how things will develop further. And this goes to the third point: the future of the region, and even like on bilateral level, the future of even Macedonia is to have a strategy in the foreign policy to identify the key players in the EU and to develop a long-term relations and long-term way how to get to the key players and to influence those who matter. Not talking to everybody, unfortunately, because of the capacity, but to have the strategy and to implement this strategy step by step. This is the way how Albanian foreign policy works. This is the way how Kosovo foreign policy works, and we don't have to go further, beyond the region, but to see what works also in the region, because we can argue about the motivations and the side effects of the deal between Italy and Albania regarding the migrant deal, but this is the way how Edi Rama knows how to play the game, and he plays the game pretty well. And if there is a strategy to get something out of the game, please consider to have a strategy how to play the game in the words and the means as Europeans are used to it. And unfortunately, and this is also the sign that those who know how to play the game, Edi Rama, Alexander Vučić, they know that it's not about enlargement, it's not about approximation, it's about to play the game and to have something out of the game. And so unfortunately, I'm sorry for being too rational, too pragmatic, but
because we already have two projects. There is actually a certain conclusion that pops up in my mind after our collaboration. We started with pursuing reconciliation, you know, but this is actually, that's not the point. The point is not to find reconciliation between Bulgaria and North Macedonia. The point is to de-escalate this conflict. It will always exist. The point is, and this is what in a sense the top government is trying to do. To shape, to focus on normal relations. Historical narratives will always be there. When you look at the Hungarian-Slovak relations, it is maybe better. I mean, it depends. But if we will be able to defeat the willingness to put that confidence and to make it a side issue, which will always be there.
Geopolitical Commission, let them talk for 18 months.
Exactly. Enjoy. And if you will get, if something good is going to come out of that, but let's not make it a front news.
Don't politicize something that is in the realm of academia. Okay? That is an ongoing discussion, especially in history. Especially in history, the ongoing discussion why the public is involved in saying things inside an academic discussion. I'm not a historian. Why my public opinion matters in the question of King Samuel, for example. What I know about King Samuel? Nothing. I know that he existed. Yeah, like the whole half of the myths of the Balkans, the Hitler in Bulgaria, Hitler in Macedonia, you know, we are a bunch of Hitler on the Balkans. Yeah, that is the main problem. Completely, now the situation is different. Now the situation is de-escalated, not perfectly, but much civilized playing field, you know, in the relations. There were a couple of events the last month that slowly the ministries are reaching each other, like Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Culture, again with the railway. We had our Minister for Infrastructure saying that yeah, we signed this treaty in Niš for railway to Serbia, but we're working constantly on the railway with Bulgaria. So kind of a normal thing, because Michael, maybe you remember better than me, the topic of Bulgaria was forbidden to talk about in national media. Yeah, there was a blockage on the question. There was a blockage on the question. We're talking about even enlargement, but nobody in the public sphere are talking about the details of the what are you doing with this?
Just what Spasimir said. There is actually some continuation. Talking about the topic is hopefully da sme živi zdraví, so Visegrad Fund to initiate to talk about this historical bilateral issues, but not in to be on headlines, but to what you said, both to establish a way how both sides can talk to each other. And this is actually, if this happens, great, they know how to talk each other. And the second is the follow-up or the initiative that was done by the Czech embassy in Skopje is there will be two workshops for journalists, public intellectuals, blah blah blah. And this is again just let people talk to each other and to explore what the other side thinks, and maybe there will be something out of it. Maybe at least to understand, to have the representatives in one room to learn how the way actually is created, how to get to the point that think like
so different, by the way, which is that was our experience, my personal experience while doing both, because I have a unique perspective studying in Bulgarian and Macedonia, so the interviews were on the local languages. People were surprised how much they have in common. People who met for the first time, people who we thought that share something, but they were not in the position to say to each other. So we have at the end of the interviews that you can find on the Alliances for EU website, people who are agreeing at the end that, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's put this inside, let's talk about this, and so on and so on. You know, I think that is the way.
Yeah. With our humble contribution.
Thank you, everybody.
We are half an hour into. That was a nice discussion. So, okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your interest. Also, thank you for your presence. See you next time.